is going on, everyone? Welcome to the never-ending, ever-evolving Ready Said podcast. We got a great show for you this week. We booked Jon Gusty from Red Pill Revolution. He came on and talked with us, so we're going to get to that in just one quick second. I just wanted to let everyone know that I was having a camera issue when we started the podcast, so I had to kind of jump over to the backup camera, which is fine. It wasn't bad. It's just there was more of the desk in the shot, and for me personally, I'm kind of a perfectionist when it comes to this, and it just didn't come to my liking, but I really wanted this podcast to work. So, yeah, that's just the only thing that's off. Probably most of you won't even notice, but I do. So, without further ado, let's get to this week's interview with Jon Gusty from the Red Pill Revolution. I hope you guys enjoy it all, everyone.
That's what makes it is absolutely so boring having conversations with people that totally agree with you. You know what
Yeah,
I mean? It's
totally.
and like you say, the trick is to just not be a douchebag to other people's stances and opinions. Because I don't know, like as a as an agorist, that's like at the core of my belief. It's like if I'm expecting everyone else to give me the respect of individuality and creativity, well then I mean it stands to reason I got to give it back to everybody else.
Yeah, and there's this like odd thing where just nobody, it's all about them. Like I would use even the comments that you'd see on some of these YouTube videos I put up where, I mean, these people just go after me. And like I did one, I think I put up a clip or it was a short video that I put up yesterday, and it got like there were some people that were really going after me, and it's fine, like I can take it. But what I just find so interesting is they're basically shooting the messenger, because I think one video I did was like, hey, it was a reaction video to something else. It was kind of old, but it was like, this is kind of funny considering like what else I was talking
Yeah.
about. And there were some people in there being like, what is this? What are you doing? And for me, it's just like, I'm just the messenger. You know what I mean? Like, you can come after me all you want. It's not a
Yeah.
big deal. But for me, it's just like, it's extremely toxic. And I mean, I guess
Well,
if that's how you want to spend your time, so be it.
there are a lot of people out there marinating in narcissism, and God forbid somebody have an independent or creative thought that differs from theirs.
Yeah, I mean, it's even crazier to see how, like, like, so you have, like, the Taylor Swift, the Swifties, or these, like, podcasts that will have these followings, and, their followers will just go after you, for not even agreeing with what it's all about or what they're saying. It's really odd. It's like no one can just, as I would like to, when it comes to sports, I have this saying. I think I stole it from Colin Coward, but it was just like, take the pom poms out of your pocket. You know what I mean? Like, quit being such a fan, quit cheering. Like, just take the pom poms out of your
Well,
pocket and look at it subjectively or objectively. Excuse me.
we sometime over the last certainly over the last 3 years, but like over the last 5 6 years, just the it didn't happen to everybody, but a lot of people just really embraced this cult like religious approach to everything, and it's oddly enough the people that are doing it, if you try to tell them that they're really pushing their religion on the rest of us, and that's not cool. We've all known that that's been a douchey move from the get go. But they'll be like, it's not my religion.
Yeah.
I'm not religion. I'm not religious. I'm an atheist. As they sit there with their I don't know, status narrative of the moment. Reading from the holy doctrine of the Church of Red and Blue, or whatever religious cult they might be involved in.
Yeah, like I have a sister. She's onto into the gay alternative lifestyle, and it's kind of funny to me the way she approaches things, because sometimes I have to say to her, like, the way you are about your lifestyle, which is fine. It's like, but what's the difference between you and someone that's really Christian?
Oh,
Other than what you're saying.
the Yeah, well, I mean, it's been said a bunch of different ways, but especially in the last 3 years since the whole silliness of 2020. I mean, I guess the people who fancied themselves the progressive left have literally turned into the religious right,
Yes.
and through their behavior. I mean, they do everything that they accuse they always historically accuse the religious right of being aggressive, being loud, being self-righteous, being judgmental, being intolerant, being dismissive. I mean, they're doing it, and they're doing it worse, and like worse than the religious right ever did. Because I'm not, I've always been kind of a sideline spectator. I've never really been a big team sport kind of guy. So whatever, I don't really play on teams. I just kind of watch the teams play each other, and it's been bizarre to watch.
Yeah, for me it was. I think I was kind of like in the beginning because I really got into politics about 6, 7 years ago. It actually is an interesting story. I was watching a lot of The Daily Show because this is 2015 when Jon Stewart's like, I'm leaving. So I was like, okay, I'll watch this all the time because it had been on since I was in high school. I'm like, well, now it's going to go. So now I'll watch it every day. And I'll never forget this. In May of 2015, he had this lady on. Her name was Suki Kim, and she was there to promote her memoirs about how she basically told North Korea that she was a teacher, but she was a journalist. So she snuck into, it's called PUS, Pyongyang University of Science and Technology, and she planted herself in there because she was able to get away with it. She was Korean. She had family from North Korea, so she was able to get through. And it just talked about like her experience there, and I was so fascinated by it because I'm discovering this little hermit kingdom. It restricts where you can go, where you can live, and I didn't realize there were places like this. So it kind of sucked me in. I was like, I need to learn everything I can about North Korea. And while this is happening, Trump starts running for president. You know what I mean? And a little backstory to that was there was this show on HBO called The Newsroom. And it was with Jeff Daniels, probably from like 12 years ago. Aaron Sorkin wrote it. And it was kind of interesting because like this was kind of like back then I didn't like politics. I was into sports, but I watched the show and this made me realize like politics is too eggheadish for me. But one of the biggest takeaways I got from that show was they did a mock debate for the RNC, and there's some like fake CNN news network as the newsroom was. And basically they tried to pitch the RNC, hey, let us do the debates. And essentially when it was all said and done, the RNC's like, yeah, we're not going to do that. And I think that episode, or it was that season ended, where for me the takeaway was, oh, these are always going to be like your Ted Cruz's, your Jeb Bush's, your George Bush's. Like the guy I'm looking for will never make it through that process. And then fast forward, to I'm reading this Suki Kim thing because I used to watch TV and read, and then Trump comes down the escalator. And I remember like he was saying all that stuff until he went, the rapists, the murderers. I'm like, well, that was fun while it lasted. Because for me, I used to see guys go, Pyaw! And then they were done. You know what I mean? So when he said that, I'm like, well, that was a fun 3 minutes. And then he just stayed at the top. And then I just got sucked in from there. Now, going back to my original point, that's kind of where I was on the team sport. You know what I mean? Because when he went into office, I mean, you go back to my Facebook account, I'm just going after people left and right. I mean, not in a negative way. I was just more trying to be not like, you need to get in line and listen. It was more like, hey, this is how the government's screwing you, but they're telling you this, and it was just after January 6th, I'm like, all right, this isn't going anywhere. It's just eating up my time and energy, and I'm just going to focus my energy somewhere else. And I just kind of stopped talking about politics on Facebook and stuff like that, It's just because, like you were saying, like it reminded me when I was like such a Bears fan, they would be down like 21-7. Their quarterback's thrown 5 interceptions. I'm like, they got a chance. They can do this. It was kind of like that, And then once January 6th happened, I'm like, all right, I'm going to take these pom-poms and throw them over here and kind of look at this more in a libertarian lens. And that's when things kind of opened up for me more. Like, yeah, I'm just going to let these two establishment wings or the uniparty yell at each other and just,
the January 6th photo op.
Yeah, that whole thing. Like, I remember I was at the gym, and I came back from the gym. I was in the driveway, and because I followed Chad Pergram, the Fox News congressional correspondent, and he had this thread about, I'm like, what is going on here? And then when I started figuring it out, I'm like, oh, man, the media is just going to hammer this thing home as long as they can. And, it's just, it is what it is, I guess. But, man, it's there's so many more questions than answers from that whole thing,
Yeah, well, it's the intelligence agencies doing what they do best.
Yes, yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I was alluding to.
Create an event so that their media partners have something to shill about.
Yeah, that's another thing that I find really crazy or just fascinating too is, especially with the Twitter files, like everyone kind of knew there was this marriage between like government and private business, especially big tech, but there was no actual proof of it. And then that's kind of come out. So, but it's not really a surprise when you think about it, because dating back to cable news and the government, like cable news and the government were working hand in hand. I mean, the White House Correspondents Association shows that right there, where the White House doesn't really run, the course the briefings. It's this WHCA, and it's really just a guy plucked out of legacy media, and he gets to decide when the press briefing ends. It's really weird stuff when you start looking into it. Yeah.
Every single touch point, whether it's media, whether it's entertainment, whether it's religion, whether it's food, all of those touch points have all been, if they weren't intentionally set up by the corporate government structure, they soon got co-opted by the corporate
Yes,
government.
and that's kind of
there's very few true independent anythings out there, whether it's media, whether it's sports, whether it's all been commercially co-opted by corporate government.
yeah, and it's just. It's very disappointing because I grew up thinking like, oh, we live in a free society, like, oh, and I remember being a teenager and hearing like guys like that were my age or older being like, oh, the government's, the dollar's worth nothing, they're but they looked like they were guys with tinfoil hats on back then because they had really, these are just, there was no way to back up what they're saying, but now we have, like, we know, the CIA is planning, people into Facebook or to Twitter, or that the government is going to Twitter and saying,
CIA
I mean, it's
created Facebook. I mean, CIA, that was a Facebook operation. I mean, that was a CIA operation.
I mean, you could see how they take Facebook and put it into these small countries, and they say like, hey, if you wanted the internet, you need to use Facebook, and then they can topple governments with that. I mean, it's a perfect tool for the CIA.
I've heard it said often in many different ways that if it's free, you are the product.
Yes, that is very, very, very true.
Hashtag most corporate social media.
Yeah, that's what it is. Everyone's just a product, and I mean, it's scary because there are sometimes I'll be talking to my girlfriend. I think the other day she was telling me like because I was moaning about H&R Block for like the 1099Ks. They charge you for those. And I was like, I'm not using H&R Block. She's like, oh, there's this thing called Free Tax USA. And I was like, okay. So I went and looked it up and made sure it was like legit. And then the next thing you know, like on Instagram and all those are like Free Tax USA ads. And I'm like, this is disgusting, disgusting. Yep. Full disclosure, this is actually the second podcast we've done. We had audio issues the last time. But before we jump into your story here, I noticed on your biography, and I wanted to ask you this last week, but I just got a little distracted. You used to play guitar, and I would really like to know what kind of guitar do you like to play, like your brand, or
Well, I started on guitar, but I quickly became a bassist.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was at best I'm a really good rhythm guitar player in the vein of like a Malcolm Young. So I hit the guitar more than I strum the guitar.
Yeah, that's like me.
Naturally more of a percussive player. So bass just made a lot more sense. But I mean I'm surrounded by guitars and basses. It rarely does an hour go by where I don't pick up one of those two. And I'm kind of all over the map. I'm a big love Gretsch hollow bodies.
Oh yes, love those. Yeah. Oh yeah.
That whole thing. I'm a big Tim Armstrong fan from Rancid, Operation Ivy. He's a fave, and so I kind of like I like the old classic hollow bodies like that. But if I'm going solid body, it's man. It's kind of a Telecaster guy.
Okay, I love the Telecaster, definitely.
Yeah, again, because I'm more of a rhythm guy, so I know anybody that's out there that's a lead guitar player is probably going,
yeah, that's yeah,
but, yeah, they're more Les Pauls, but no, I like cheap Telecasters. I like Gretsch hollow bodies, and then for bass, man, I don't really have a favorite bass. I've got a Guild Pilot that years and years ago I borrowed from Mike Mills of REM.
Oh, okay.
Lived in Athens, and we were doing things around the same time, and we're neighbors and under the same management. If yeah, and needed to borrow it for recording, and he was kind enough to just say when I went to give it back, he was like, "Man, I don't even play that thing anymore. You seem to like it, so that's probably my favorite bass. Is
Oh,
this one?
nice. He let you keep that one, huh?
Yeah, yeah, they're nice. They're nice people.
I was in a, just a band with like two of my friends, and we would go down to, this is back when I lived in Chicago, and we would, okay, for reference, this is like 2005, so we didn't have phones. If we wanted to find an open mic, we had to like go into the newspaper. And I mean, it feels like it was so long. I mean, it was almost 20 years ago, so I guess, but still, like it feels like an era ago, really, when you think about having to use a
Was
newspaper to find an open mic. So we found one, and honestly, I might have been using like Craigslist or those early days of what the internet became today, but it was still kind of like a hybrid. So anyway, we found this open mic in Berwyn, which is like in Chicago, and well, so if anyone. If you've seen Wayne's World, do you remember the part in Wayne's World where they drive by and there's those cars that are on? That's Berwyn in Chicago, okay?
yeah, oh, yeah.
So, and they took it down recently, or a few years ago. But so this open mic was there. We go there, and it became a staple. We'd go there every Wednesday or Tuesday, whatever it was. And the band that played there ended up being these professional guys, and they would see us show up. And one of them, his name was Bobby Scumaci. He was the piano player for that house band. And he was like, "Hey, I'm building a studio. Do you guys want to come by?" I mean, he was probably just trying to make a few extra bucks off of us, but we needed studio time. We didn't want to pay for it. It was a perfect thing. So anyway, we go to this guy's house. Really cool dude. He ended up playing keyboards for Dave Mason. What was that? He was in a band with Steve Winwood back in like the late 60s, I want to say.
Traffic.
Yes, Traffic. Thank you. I knew it started with a T. Yeah, so we would start, he would just tell us stories, and he was pretty cool. And he was really nice. Like, he was probably like, "Who are these amateurs?" But he was making money off of us. It was fine. But this is my favorite part with this guy. He let us like get high and stuff in his basement, and he goes, "Hey, I'm gonna do a shot of Jack. Do you guys want one?" Now, full disclosure, I don't really. I mean, this is my 20s. I was drinking, but I didn't drink. So, and he was a big dude. He was probably like 6'4", 200 something. We go upstairs to the kitchen. He pulls out this handle of Jack Daniels. I mean, those big ones, and just swigs it back. And I'm thinking he's gonna pour me a glass, and he just, "There you go." And I'm like, "Oh no, this is one of the it's man up or go home." So, man, I hit that thing pretty hard, and I felt good after that experience. I'm like, "Oh, this is why people drink Jack Daniels." 'Cause I was just like, "Oh, I feel great, just nice and relaxed." But yeah, that was my band experience. But I was playing drums actually in that band.
Yeah, I live west of Nashville in Middle Tennessee, so whiskey is a way of life.
Oh yes,
around
I can imagine out
parts.
there. Oh yeah, definitely. All right, well, let's get to your story, John, because I really liked what we were talking about last week. And yeah, I'm gonna just turn over the floor to you and let you tell your story, and maybe I'll try to interject there if I can, because I know you like to talk a little bit, but that's all right. The floor is yours, John. Please let us know about Jon Gusty.
Well, yeah, man. I so we wrote me and four other chaps wrote this book, The Red Pill
Okay.
Revolution. And the way that came about, because I never set out to be an author. Um, I was a record store guy, band guy. Later in life, as I got a little older and more responsible, helped launch a couple of record labels and worked for some management companies and all in the music business. Um, I as I did and saw different aspects of the music business later in life, I really saw how orchestrated it was. I mean, like artists not being allowed to be artists. It was super predatory. There'd be these beautiful, raw, real artists that get found by these big corporations, and then they start telling them how to dress and how to sing and how to wear their hair, and I just really saw the ugly manipulative side of the music industry. And it was never lost on me that very rare is it the case that final product that the listener, the consumer gets to see and listen to, very rarely is that as the artist would have probably wanted it to be had they just been left to their art and been able to sing what they want, wear what they want, play what they want. And it to the point where I can't and won't name any names because I've signed non-disclosure agreements in my day working for some management companies and directly for some artists. But the falseness of the industry even extended to I've actually with my own eyes witnessed human beings who, let's just say in real life their name was Joe Smith or whatever, but
Okay.
publicly they're known as a particular artist that you would know and
I
recognize,
see. Okay.
but in reality, they're that's just a stage name, and their real name is Joe Smith or whatever. I saw the human Joe Smith, who's publicly known as this, also playing a complete other different character, if you will, or brand, if you will, in the music. So like one human being known publicly as two completely different artists, and that was kind of eye opening. But I always kind of chalked it up as it is show business. I mean, we don't really think that Luke Skywalker is a real person. It's it's played by a guy named Mark Hamill, and
Right. Yeah.
I mean, and so why and we don't think that Brad Pitt was really Tyler Durden. I mean, and that, those type of things. And as I completely parallel with my music industry life, my lovely wife Dawn, she was diagnosed with what she was originally told was multiple sclerosis, and she's confined to a wheelchair, electric wheelchair still. She hasn't taken a step on her own in about 15 years, and I have, she's my wife, and I completely threw myself into trying to figure out what was really wrong with her and what are some things we could do about it. Because I think anybody that's interfaced with the medical industrial complex should know that you are one of many, 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 many people they're pumping through their doors.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, the system does not have your best interest in mind at all. I actually had the luxury of, for the most part, being a cash pay patient.
Oh.
Whenever I've interfaced with the medical industrial complex, I do not go through insurance or anything. I make them tell me the price up front, which is always fun because they never know, and I pay in cash, and that way I hold all the cards. It is no different than if I go to a mechanic and the mechanic doesn't fix my car. I'm coming back. You're fixing my car, or you're giving
Yeah.
me my money back. And so I just interesting pro tip for those interfacing with the medical industrial complex: pay cash, don't involve an insurance company, and you actually do hold all the power, because at that point you are a consumer. It's just like you're going to Walmart or Dunkin' Donuts or anything else.
Is there
Um,
is there something you specifically do, like? Because I mean, and for me, when I was in my 20s, I never had insurance. So because I'm allergic to peanuts, so obviously I would have to go to the hospital in that situation. Um, is there something you say or do? You're just like, yo, I don't have insurance. I just want to pay cash. Like, how do you approach that with?
yeah. I mean, we could talk for the next hour on
Probably
just
just
the
about that.
scam that is insurance. I mean, the insurance, aka betting against yourself at all times.
Right. Yeah, I hear
Yeah,
that.
but we're like, and yeah, that sounds like a good strategy. But but no, I don't. It's kind of a mantra of mine that if you are actually concerned about your health and wellness, stay far away from the medical industrial complex. Do not go to hospitals. Do not listen to people in white lab coats with funny letters after their name. They After the events of 2020, if anybody is still listening to that particular apparatus of the infrastructure. I don't know what to tell you. I mean, we've got seen example after example after example of lies, flat out manipulation, complete total fabrication of things, deception. Yes. So as a general rule, I don't interface with them, but when I have, yeah, I'm just up front, and every once in a while, you need to get an X-ray, and you know what? I'll use the medical industrial complex for like more structural things like or equipment needs, like if I need a particular reading or a particular test done that who has x-ray equipment sitting around in their garage, not many people, but I would go. Funny story, both of my boys are big soccer players, and I needed to my one son had jacked up his knee, and we needed to go get an x-ray done, and I just booked my own self at a radiologist's place that I was aware of, and walked in, and the very first thing they asked me is they said, "Can I see your insurance card?" I was like, "What does insurance have to do with this? I'm here for an X-ray." When you go to gas up your car, you don't pull out your auto insurance, or when you change your
Right.
tire,
Yeah.
you don't pull out your auto insurance, or when you get an oil change, you don't pull out your auto insurance. I'm just here for an X-ray. There's no need for insurance. So I just want to, pay. And she did not know what to charge me, so she needed time to figure that out. Meanwhile, we go back, get our X-ray done, come back out. She finally has a price point, and she charges me $39.95 to get an X-ray, which is, that's fair, okay. And I asked her on the way out. I kind of turned around. I said, "Hey, let me ask you something." I said, if I'd have pulled out like a Blue Cross Blue Shield card and done my copay thing, what would it have been? $75.
Wow.
So it would have cost me almost twice to pay with insurance, than it would just again, another pro tip: ask what the price is, let them figure it out, because they'll have to come back and they'll give you a price, and then ask them, well, that's probably the insurance price. What's the cash price? And then they'll have to go back and figure that
Yeah,
out.
that's yeah. I remember watching. There was this show on oh one of the corporate news nets, like Truth TV, whatever it was called. It was called Adam Ruins Everything, and it wasn't bad. It was a little,
Oh, yeah, I know.
it wasn't bad. I mean, he was left wing, and that was fine. That was his prerogative. But there was some
It's a good
stuff on there
shtick.
that was pretty good. I remember he went on Rogan with his, the about transgenders being in other women's or men's sports, and he just got destroyed on that one. Sometimes I watch that clip to just remind me, like, that guy doesn't know everything,
No,
Uh, but he
he
had the
had a good
medical industry
shtick.
complex pretty good. He did do that one because he kind of said, like, it used to be one way where everything was just somewhat affordable, and then the insurance companies got involved like everything else and fucked it all up basically.
Well, what other business vertical do you know of where there's a complete disconnect between the person or persons like providing the goods or services and the consumers paying for the goods and services? I mean, no, try to think of any other business vertical that has this ominous third party piece of infrastructure that's in between you. I mean, when you go to, again, when you go to your coffee shop, and you say, "Hey, I want this," and they give you this, and there's an exchange of money right there. You don't pawn it off on a third party to figure the payment out or
Right.
whatever. But the coffee shop knows exactly what that coffee costs and what to charge you, and a lot of times you see a menu, and so you got to ask yourself, why aren't medical and doctor type places the same way? Like, why can't we walk in and see a menu? Why can't we, why are and why is it so hard to get prices out of them? I mean, try to, if you ever just want to have some fun, just next time you're in one of those places, just start asking about prices, and they don't know.
Yeah,
They don't know,
it's
they don't know what to charge, because that they don't even, they're literally running a business, but they're not. Like, the most important part of their business financially, which would be all of their administrative costs, the collection of the funds, they pawn that off onto a whole other industry. It's not even, again, it's a weird business vertical, and I think people just don't even question it. They just think that that's just how it is, and it doesn't have to be that way. And if more people walked in and demanded to pay cash, yeah, it would definitely change some things. or even better, don't walk in at all. And next time you want to actually get better, go seek a health and wellness professional versus a medical professional, because there's a big difference between the two.
Yeah,
The
and
health,
and
well,
there's a lot of people that like their knee jerk reaction is to just go to the hospital, you know. And for me, I never understood that because when I was a kid, we'd go to the hospital and just sit in the emergency room for 4 or 5 hours
yeah,
and wait for them to get. And I just it put just such a bad idea in my head of going to the hospital that like I'm only going to the hospital if I'm like dying. Like actually 5 years ago, here at this house I'm at here, I came by for Sunday dinner. Um, and there were chocolate chip cookies. And I was a little high, and I wanted to watch the Patriots Steelers game, and there's a huge 90-inch TV out there. So I grabbed a few cookies, started eating them, and I remember thinking to myself, well, these are a little saltier than usual because I eat chocolate chip cookies. I've been eating them for years. I know what a good chocolate chip cookie tastes like, but this one was saltier. So the first thing was like, is there peanuts in this? And then I hear someone go, no, it's fine. I was like, okay. Ate another one, and then the corner of my eye, I see my girlfriend's sister digging through the garbage, and then she pulls it out because it was those Toll House, like you buy the
yeah.
and if Toll House needs to do something about this because the ones that have peanut butter and the ones that don't, the difference in the packaging is, I mean, if you're not paying attention, or if you're an old grandma like my girlfriend's mom or grandma was who bought them, you would miss that, you know. So
Yeah.
it's obvious. I knew immediately because I get this little feeling right here in my cheeks. I'm like, oh, this is peanut butter. And originally I was like, it's fine. I'll just wait this out because in the past I've done that before. I get hives. My back gets real. My back hurts. It's indigestion, whatever, and then it's over with. But within 10 minutes of that allergy reaction, my throat started closing up. You know, like I could start to hear myself sound like that, you know. So I was like, I have to go to the hospital. And, you know, it was fine. They rushed me through, but it was still just like that was the last thing I wanted to do because of just everything we've been discussing here.
Yeah. Yeah. Imagine if every time you had a car issue, you went to the dealership. You
Yeah,
ran to
right.
the, it's like,
Exactly.
it's just kind of a similar
It
equivalent.
would be,
Anyway,
yeah.
anyway.
I mean, the only other sector I can think, I mean, not even a sector, but that kind of runs close to this. Uh, well, that's fun. Would be I have to fix my mic here. Would
Yeah.
be the college, the college education system and the way that thing is. You know, because it's not an insurance company, but you have the government getting in there and screwing everything up. You know, because college is so bloated because of administration costs.
And isn't it interesting that those two industries are related? It's like the whole university system is just another extension of the corporate government complex. So you can go to their corporate government schools to get their corporate government certification to work in their corporate government medical facilities. And yeah, it's all a big game. And what's the famous George Carlin quote?
It's a
It's a
big
big club
club, and you're
you
not
ain't
in
in
it.
it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I was trying to fix my mic here off camera. All right. I think
Our
that's.
conversation is so intense, it's knocking
I
me
know.
out.
It's just things are falling off the table here. It's that just I couldn't even tell you how that happened. All right, I've been hiding off camera here. I'm gonna get myself back on camera. Okay, we're back. Um, yeah. So that's some crazy stuff. Like basically, what I've learned is when the government starts getting involved, things are gonna go pretty badly. You know.
Yeah, and that, so we as I got deeper into trying to do something proactive about my wife's physical condition and interfacing with the both the medical industrial complex and then the health and wellness uh, industry playing field. I started to see how scripted and manipulated the medical industrial complex is. I mean,
Okay.
you've literally got if you notice, they all have today, they all have tablets or they're reading off screens, and they're literally everything is templated. I mean, whatever you tell them, they're filling out fields like little questionnaire fields, and they're plugging it in, and they're not even making any diagnosis. It's coming back and telling them what to say. The whole thing is scripted. If you ask questions that even go a little bit below the surface, Man, I thought I knew what ego was working in the entertainment industry. You haven't seen ego like exists in the medical industry. I
Really?
mean, oh my gosh, you've got I have had I have had the most smug responses from medical professionals because I've asked a question and I mean I've literally had people go, young child, like just so condescending, like,
Yeah.
don't concern yourself with such questions like that. Just that's why we're here. And I mean, it's like weird, like creepy cult like responses and nah, I don't know. So I knew that the entertainment industry was scripted and manipulated, and I quickly found out that so is the medical industrial complex. And then and I think that was really when I first started going. This is all tied together. Again, to even work in the medical industrial complex, you have to go to their
Right.
universities.
Yeah.
And so it's all tied together. And I am by just by the way that I'm wired, I am a embrace individualism and I embrace creativity. And I always identified myself as a conservative ideologically, and I think that term has gotten completely co-opted and isn't even used the way that it was originally intended to. When I earlier in life, when I recognized myself as a conservative, I meant it like I was taught it, where if you have things, let's say you throw things on the table like, the your rights and your privileges and your the ability to have property, personal property, and all of those things that we all hold dear. I take a very conservative approach to giving any third party power over any of that stuff. Um, and if I do give, if I give a third party control over any aspect of my life, I'm taking a very conservative approach to it versus someone that would willingly give all of that stuff over to a third party, which would be a much more liberal approach. And so it's kind of it's a little hard for me to to watch people identify themselves as conservative, but at the same time they're literally worshiping and feeding into a system, which is the District of Columbia,
Yeah.
that is literally the definition of big, intrusive, centralized power and authority. And so everything about anything that comes out of the District of Columbia is by nature liberal. Name one administration that has ever reduced anything. Name one administration that's like spent less than the one before it,
Yeah.
or scaled back the size of. The overall size of anything. None of
None.
them.
They don't. Yeah.
Every single one spends more than the other and creates more commercial corporate government entities than the previous than their
Yeah.
predecessors.
They keep growing the beast.
Yeah, so none of it is conservative. None of it is. It's like calling, it's like water calling itself fire, or
Yeah.
it's like it's not. It's
It's not what that
literally
is. Yeah.
yeah.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh no. So we my my wife's um he is a doctor, but we don't we've since really don't like that term since the events of 2020. We don't like identifying good people as doctors because that term is just again has a negative connotation after the events of 2020.
Yeah.
I My doctor is my wife's doctor. His name is Dr. Jeremy Ayers. He's over in the UK. He and I we became really good friends. He was someone who invested his time, effort, and money into getting my wife better, and it was a really pure, selfless interest he took in my wife's case. and we became dear friends. And I really found an ideological playmate with him. We were like little kids together, like forming a band again. Like we were
Okay.
like 15 years old,
Yeah.
excited to go out in the garage and write new songs. And although we weren't writing songs, we were writing, uh, what would eventually become this book. And so the book, we started writing it in the winter of 2019, right around the time when Event 201 was happening, which is still on YouTube for those of you that are interested, which is where the powers that shouldn't be all gathered on October of 2019 and laid out exactly what they were going to do. Lo and behold, 4 months later, they started actually doing it. And so we were writing this book during all of that. And so the book was originally written as a handbook for those. I think everybody, regardless of what team you might find yourself on or whatever ideology you might subscribe to, I think all of us know that something is not right. Like, this is not the way that we should be living. I mean, just simple things like why are we why is there a payment gateway in between humans and water? I mean, it literally falls from the sky and springs from the ground. Why is there a payment gateway in between that? In fact, why is there a payment gateway between humans and everything that humans need? And we're not taught from birth how to find water, find food, build shelter. We're not taught to do any of that stuff. And we fancy ourselves as so progressive and advanced, but we unless I'm missing something, we're the only species that I'm aware of that puts payment gateways up and has centralized power the way that humans have done it. I mean, birds somehow freaking manage to get it done, and fish do, and deer, and trees, and all other forms of life somehow manage to thrive and survive. And really, a lot of their only threats are from humans
Right.
screwing up
Yeah.
screwing up their shit. But like what? So our entire human condition is kind of based on slavery. I mean, we are all slaves to some sort of corporate commercial setup. And I guess it would be okay if we had the ability to consent to these things from the get-go, but a lot of these things are just baked into our life. I mean, literally from birth. I mean, what's the first three things that happen to most babies when they're born? They're shot full of poisons, they're mutilated, and then there's a certificate created that represents them. I mean, they're literally turned into a certificate is a commercial instrument. They're literally turned into a commercial commodity at birth. So, I mean, we don't even have like the chance. We don't have a fighting chance to kind of get on a sovereign, fair, natural playing field. I mean, right from the get-go, we are certified, monetized, commercialized, and thrown out there into the game. And so Jeremy and I just wanted to put together a handbooks or a field guide, if
Okay.
you will, of just, man, for anybody that is kind of, I don't know, their eyes are opening and they're just feeling like, man, something isn't right. This is just not the way that life should feel. The book does what I think is a really good job of posing some questions and taking a look at some big subjects like distraction. I mean, just the distraction is a huge tool that is used by corporations all the time. But most people don't think of distraction as a tool. So the book just walks through a lot of
Okay.
these concepts, and hopefully it's filled full of memes and a lot of music lyrics, and just it should be a pretty fun, easy to consume read. But at the end of it, the hope is that you put that book down and go, yeah, okay, I'm not crazy. There's a bunch of other people out there that are feeling these same things, and more than anything else, I really hope it inspires people to deploy, I think, one of the biggest weapons we got in our arsenal, and that's just the simple ability to say no. Like there's so many of us out there that are afraid to say no, or afraid to take a stance that might go against the whatever the narrative of the moment is. I mean, I think a lot of people think that peer pressure stopped, at the playground
Right,
back in
like when you're
school. But
in
man,
school, yeah.
I see a lot of grown adults that are behaving in strange ways because of peer pressure. I mean, it's commonplace to have someone go, I was thinking that, but I'd never say that in public.
Right, yeah,
Well,
you hear
well,
that a
why?
lot these days.
Why?
Yeah.
Why? Why would anyone be afraid to say anything as long as you're saying it with respect and with yeah, I think we were talking before the show. It's like I as an agorist, which is really just a subset of anarchy. There's really there's two rules to being an anarchist. It's no masters, no slaves, and then the non-aggression principle.
Yep. Yeah, the nap.
Those are the two things. And a lot of if you listen to Fox News or CNN, they'll tell you that anarchists are it's chaos, and it's like
Right.
no. No one ever said nothing about no rules. We said no rulers.
Right. That's a big myth about anarchism that I kind of fell for up to a few years ago, where you're under the impression anarchy is what it sounds like, just mayhem. But really, the definition of it is it's just something without a leader.
And everything should be based on consent. There's nothing wrong with a leader. If you want to start up, a town or an area or whatever, and I have the opportunity to choose to follow you or to listen to you or follow your lead or listen to your rules and abide by your rules. If I consent to it, that's perfectly fine. And if I want to leave, I'll leave. I mean, so just things being really agorism is just a consent-based lifestyle, consent-based dynamic of living life where you don't do anything unless it's consensual.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of obviously laws and regulations based on that, but yet we seem to get away from that when it comes to, certain things in society, and it's really a head scratcher these days. Why people just have this like sheep mentality, like with COVID would obviously be a great example of it because it went from people like I remember I'll never forget this. It was probably 2 weeks into the shutdown, and I think this is when Andrew Cuomo was starting to become like the star of the media. And I was managing a restaurant at the time, and I remember I was talking to this lady, and I was in this suburb up in Orlando, and I just assumed everyone up there was a Democrat, so I was gonna use the opportunity to kind of crap on Cuomo. And then when I did, and I mean, for me, like I didn't care how this lady was gonna react, I was just gonna deal with it. And surprisingly, she ended up agreeing with me. And anyway, my point was I remember telling her like, didn't we learn anything from 9/11 when we let the government like, was the Patriot Act? And I'm like, here we are 2 weeks later, we're like, yeah, make us wear masks, shut everything down. Like, what bad can happen from this? And it's like nobody learned anything 20 years later. The way the masses collectively think is just I can't wrap my head around it sometimes.
And it was interesting to I mean, what a psyop on such grand scale, and to be able to watch it firsthand. I mean, I don't say this with arrogance. I'm just being honest. Um, I None of that really affected me or my family or quite frankly a lot of the people that I am around. I never put on a mask. I've certainly never been tested, and damn sure don't put um, unknown corporate chemical concoctions into my body in any way, shape, or form. I don't drink them. I don't ingest them in any way. I don't shoot them into my veins. None of that stuff. I try to live a healthy life, and I think rule number one of trying to live a healthy life is you do things as naturally as possible. And so I again, I didn't all of this pandemic shutdown stuff, it really didn't affect me. I just smiled and said no, thank you, quite often. And I don't really have any horror stories. I never had anybody really get in my face about anything, or, because I wasn't out there looking for
Right.
confrontation. It's just
Yeah.
every once in a while somebody would say, will you please put on a mask? And I would just go, no, thank you. I had one person one time, question me as to why I didn't want to, and I was like, because it's really unhealthy. My wife suffers from what is likely a lifelong immune deficiency scenario. So we take the immune system real seriously. We're not playing games. This isn't a Fox News CNN game that a lot of other people were playing at the time. This is your mouth is one of the body's exhaust systems, and so you are constantly detoxing through your breath, and to sit there and to put something, I mean, it would, you aren't, it's a really unhealthy practice. It might make sense if you are doing some really 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 uh, precise work, like say, like if you are building like circuit boards or something and you don't want to dribble, or get spit or
Yeah.
something into your work, or if you're, say you're a surgeon or whatever, and you don't want to get, it might make sense to so that you're not in putting foreign objects into some place that they don't belong. But um, I don't know that there was ever a good argument made as to why masks should ever have been worn. But the masking of people is not nothing new. I mean, it's nothing new at all. I mean, the military's been doing it with detainees for years. I mean, there's old photos of prisoners of war being masked that go back to the 40s and stuff like that. So masking is a humiliating sign of compliance and submission.
Yeah.
And we
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, and I was just going to say, and it was interesting to, I think one of the silver linings for people like myself in all of that was it was interesting to watch those that were compliant and corporate slaves identify themselves so visually. I mean, it's at least you could walk down the street and go, okay, well, there's one. Oh, there's another one. And you just, it was an interesting visual dynamic that hadn't existed in our pop culture before, and now it does.
Yeah, and like with the Ukraine thing too, there's kind of a parallel there because you had a lot of these same people that were on the pro mask, pro CDC, like all of a sudden they're pro war. It's just like, wait, what is going on here? Like
Well,
and the
but
way the media deals with it too, with how they present it, like with COVID, they had the death counter. You know what I mean? It was just this fear mongering way of selling a story, so to speak, to sell ads on top of that. And it's the same thing with this Ukraine thing. I mean, it doesn't seem as much as it was, like 9 months ago, because we're Americans. We kind of just move on with our lives when it comes to these kind of things.
well,
But that was kind of what.
there is such a thing as a 90-day news cycle,
Yes,
and
yeah, I
if you notice, most of these, the things that, like, some people change, they change their social media little frame profile, to whatever the flavor of the social posturing of the moment might be. It's like those things usually last about 90 days, and it's by design. I mean, there's, you know, I know people who are writers who write copy, and most people in mainstream media are working on 90-day life cycles of stories and narratives.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's because what I think a lot of people tend to forget is, you know, print, TV, like they're a business. They're there to make money. You know what I mean? And I think we were talking about this kind of last time too. Is it's kind of turned from a public service into infotainment. Like
Yeah.
when I watch Fox News, MSNBC, and any of those, like it's they're telling you the news, but they're trying to entertain you at the same time. And it's like, well, what is this? This isn't
They
doing anything.
literally, it's literally referred to as programming.
Yeah.
Have you ever think about that? I mean, they're flat out calling it programming, and I just think that we've grown up with that word, and I think we think it means something different than what it really means. I mean, it is programming. I mean, you will see people that will like very vocally. I see people on social media all the time going, "I need a new program. I need something new to
Something to watch.
watch."
Yeah, the
Like
show hole.
people are begging to be programmed. They are begging for programming, and not everybody, but there's enough people out there that are begging to be programmed that these media conglomerates know that. And so if there's an agenda that is going to be pushed, whether it's for profit, whether it's to condition people to ready them for another, you know, theater of war scenario or whatever, that then you'll see, you'll see a lot of war movies. Perfect example is, look at all the UFO stuff of late. Gee, I wonder if they're teeing up for a UFO event. Hmm. I bet you maybe by the end of 2023, I bet you there's going to be a really scary UFO event that's going to freak a lot of people out. And, oh my gosh, we're going to make contact. And, I mean, it's you could after a while watching these patterns
You
play
kind of get
out
on.
time and
Yeah,
time again. It's like, again, mark my word, there will be a UFO event before 2023 is over. I mean, it's they're priming it. You got the military involved, and releasing documents, and oh my gosh, you're saying you can't look at news aggregation sites like the Drudge Report or whatever without seeing at least a UFO or astro or some sort of space thing. At least one
and
every day.
one of the things we have learned too is a lot of this information is leaking out of these, out of the classified documents are leaking out of the government, and it doesn't serve any purpose other than to serve that person's narrative of who's leaking. Like another thing I used to see when I used to watch a lot of sports media was that when stories would leak, between like uh, a sports club or a player, generally you have to ask yourself, well, who benefits from this leak? And then when you answer that question, that's who probably leaked it. And it's the same with cable news. Like when Trump the inauguration of Trump was like the oddest day for me because Trump was becoming president, so yeah, that was obvious. But the other thing was, all of a sudden the government became a leaky faucet. In the 8 years prior, there weren't like random stories leaking out of the Department of Justice, the CIA, the FBI, and all of a sudden this guy's going into power and people can't stop like leaking to the media, and it's because they're trying to serve their own narrative. Like I think they took Mike Flynn down that way by just leaking because he was on a phone call with I think it was the Russians' counterpart to him, and this is an incoming administration going into the government, and whoever unmasked him, you know, because I think he was on the transcript as American number one, but then someone who had access to who it was leaked it out. I mean, that ended up doing him in, and he ended up losing. I mean, I'm trying to defend Michael Flynn. I'm just saying this is the
The,
deep state in real time. You know what I mean?
the art of the leak is just a marketing ploy. It's just a tool. I mean, the music industry's been leaking things since as long as there's been a music industry. The movie industry leaks things. Whenever you want to, whenever the objective is to stir up interest or laser focus some interest, there'll be a leak. I mean, look at like not so much any really with the music industry, the whole digitization of music have made leaks so much easier now that like we almost don't even care when things are leaked because once somebody gets a file and it's out there to the world, then everybody has it. So leaks aren't as intense as they used to be. But I mean,
Yeah, that's
it
true.
used to be, when these massive.
Oh, oh, John, did I lose you? Hold on, we're gonna pause really quick.
Yeah,
Oh,
the public 30 days early or whatever. It's like, well, that's like that's classic marketing. You're creating interest in that product, and it's just gonna bring laser focus to it. So, and they do it with news. They do it with products. They do it with everything. I mean, let's not forget that what we call government is you use the term infotainment. It's the same as Hollywood. It's Hollywood for ugly people. I
yes,
mean,
yeah, yeah.
politics is just Hollywood for ugly people. I mean, that's been said a
You know,
bunch of different ways as well,
it's
but
funny you
it's
say that
true.
actually, because this was so a story came out months ago, many months, probably a year ago, and it was about Pete Buttigieg, the Department of Transportation secretary, how his husband would be at the gym and would get approached by these okay, I'll look at it this way. Like in Hollywood, you have these guys they're always trying to worm their way into some power broker's office or get the approval so they can have the clout, so on and so forth. In Washington, it also works that same way. So this guy, I think his name was like Chaz or something like that.
Yeah, they're called lobbyists.
Yes, I don't know if I don't remember exactly what this guy was trying to do, but he was basically trying to worm his way into Pete by getting to the husband through the gym. And I don't remember. That's what that story was about, from the macro perspective. But it made me think because, growing up, I used to watch that show Entourage, and that's kind of what Entourage is, it's an aspect of it is about. And I just started seeing that parallel between Washington and Hollywood, how you just have these people that are power brokers. Because they, obviously, if you're an agent like Ari Gold, you're going to have a lot of power in Hollywood. If you're the department, you're the transportation secretary, you're going to have a lot of power in Washington, pertaining to, for whatever reason. I don't want to act like I know, but that's very interesting, that parallel there.
As your friend, I need to warn you. You need to be careful about when you're talking about Pete Buttigieg, his husband, and using the phrase "worming your way in." You put those three things together, and you might find yourself canceled.
Yeah, I better watch what I'm saying here. But yeah, it's very
Insert snake joke here.
we do a little dirty humor sometimes. Yeah. But yeah, it's that weird that marriage of just or the parallel, I guess is what I meant to say. It's just weird, like how these. I don't know. I really just it's just odd to me,
Yeah. I have with all of the we have a little bit of a lull now because we do our we play everyone's favorite game show, America's Next Top President, every 4 years. And so we have a little bit before that starts, but I'm curious, and I know you were kind enough to share with me kind of where you stand on things, and I appreciate that. And let me ask you something, and
sure.
Maybe I'm asking this to everybody who is I know there are really good people. I would count yourself as one of those who like you really want to be involved and you want to stay up on things and you want to make a change and you want to see things change for the better and a lot of this nonsense stop and all that. But when I'm talking specifically about the District of Columbia, I jokingly call it the Church of the Red and Blue. When I'm talking about that apparatus, the Republicans and the Democrats, as long as I've been alive. And I've seen a lot of, I'm 57 years old. I graduated high school in '83. I've seen a lot of political brands come and go. But one thing, and this is my question: can you? And I'm not trying to be a douche and asking.
No, not at all.
But I'm honestly asking: can you cite any examples of whether it's the Republicans doing it or the Democrats doing it, can you cite any examples of them making have they made us healthier? Are things less expensive? Are schools more efficient? Are we less busy or distracted? Is it easier to earn a living? Are we more self-sufficient in any way at all? Like, is shelter, water, food, cost of living? I mean, have there been any? I asked earlier, are there any examples of like any administration spending less than the one before it, or actually scaling down the size of operations in a meaningful way? I'm not talking about an administration go, well, we closed this department or whatever. No, I'm talking about it was this size when you came in, the whole thing, and it's this size when you left. You know, like it all went down. Are there any examples of red and blue doing anything that have we progressed? Has there been any progress in any way, shape, or form in any of those things that you can think of?
No, I mean, what seems to be the problem when it comes to all that is that Congress has decided that they don't want to be held accountable for any decisions that they make. And I think that is kind of shown
They're
in these huge
they're never
omnibus
going to be
bills.
held.
Yeah. Well, I
They're
mean,
never going to be held
they don't
accountable
vote
because
single issue anymore. So that way no one can be held accountable because they're all scared of campaign ads. The Congress, they have these elections they have to do every 2 years. And, maybe I don't want to say either way because I mean it's good because you can hold them accountable every election cycle, but it's bad because they're too distracted trying to get reelected to do their job, And it looks like what Congress has done is abdicated the responsibility and kicked that over to the executive branch with the whole purpose of, hey, we're just going to hide behind these large voting bills, and just let all that fall on the president, and then they can just Congress becomes talking heads in between all that. Like what is Congress? All I do is see them on MSNBC, Fox News, CNN talking. Like they're just taxpayer funded talking heads.
It's almost like they're religious pastors or something
Yes,
like that.
yeah. And then they go,
or
yeah,
whatever. But like they're never ever going to be held accountable for anything. And here's why: because they are a commercial entity. It's just like you and I can't change Walmart. Walmart is a commercial entity. The only individuals who can actually change Walmart are the people who own Walmart and who, operate Walmart. The customers aren't, the best thing the customers could do is just not, if they really want to change, just stop going to Walmart, and Walmart would stop existing, because all corporate commercial entities exist for one reason and one reason only, and that is to profit. They have to keep profiting in order to stay alive and live to fight another day, month, year, whatever. And so we aren't dealing with government, we're dealing with commercial corporate entities. It is not the United States of America. It's the United States of America Incorporated.
Yeah, I say that too. The corporate states of America. Sorry, go ahead.
So why do we need them? We don't need to be nobody. I mean, I know some people like to be controlled and some people find comfort in having things done for them. But as a people, we don't need corporate entities lording over us, telling us how to live our lives. We don't. What we need is actual infrastructure that is consent based. If you want to live, if you and I want to set up a town, and we say, hey, these are the rules, and if you want to live here, these are the rules. And why do I get to make the rules? Because this is my land. I own or control this land, and so I get to make the rules. Now, if you like my rules, you can come live here. If you don't like my rules, you go live in the next town that might suit you better. I mean, that is how most living organisms organize. It's a natural way to organize. It is completely unnatural to have commercial entities ruling over human beings. We don't need to be ruled over by commercial entities. And so I don't understand why every 4 years people expect especially anybody that's if you're over 30 years old, you've lived long enough to see this pattern play out more than once. It is never going to get it's only going to get more expensive. We're only going to get sicker. Things are going to become less efficient. It's going to be harder to earn a living. We're going to have less shelter, less water, less food. It's, you know what I mean? Like it's never, none of that stuff has progressed in any way, shape, or form, and it's not going to, as long as people feel the need to be dependent on commercial entities lording over them. Like we should be trying to be self-sufficient and self-organizing.
Yeah, I've seen stories too where people try to go like live off the grid, so to speak, and then they get in trouble with the government. Like the electric company's like, "Hey, I can't monetize that dude. Go get him." I mean, not really, but I'm sure on some form of level. I mean, I've heard of
No.
variation of that.
There are places where the government actually has the audacity to tell people they can't collect rainwater.
Yeah, I've heard of that too. Yes.
Yeah, and I mean, I would love to. I live in Middle Tennessee. Okay. So I would love to see a commercial entity that calls itself government try to tell real people that they can't collect water, or they can't have chickens, or they can't have firearms, or what you would. If you came to Middle Tennessee and tried to tell people they couldn't watch college football, you want
riots.
You want to talk about what Fox News and CNN describes as anarchy? You would see some freaking anarchy, like in the worst way, and so like there's just this baked in perception that far too many people have that authority is completely proclaimed. Like it blows my mind, dude. I don't know if you thought about this, but recently, Queen Lizard Beast died, or whatever, and who knows what the real story there was, but like in today's playing field, where you can literally get in trouble for not using the right gender pronouns, the monarchy, you're talking about a bloodline that is self-admittedly, first of all,
inbred.
They're inbred.
Yeah.
They're inbred. They're not even British. They're German. They changed their name in 1917 from the House of Saxe-Gotha.
That's right.
Because they had the whole Nazi thing going on. So
that's why they changed it. Yeah, they're like,
House of Windsor now.
Yeah.
So you've got inbred Nazis who claim that their bloodline is self-ordained by God to rule over everyone, to the point where they call everyone their subjects.
Yeah.
How in the hell is that how is that getting by all the Karens out there or all the people that get their panties in a wad because somebody used the wrong pronoun, or didn't wear a pride jersey or whatever during the national anthem? Like, you've literally got, like, if anybody stood up and said, my bloodline is ordained by God to rule over all of you, like, does that sit well with anybody? But you saw, like, when the Queen died, everyone's, oh, I'm so sad, she was such a good woman. I mean, are you kidding? These are psychopaths. It is psychopathic to look another person in the eye and say, dude, my bloodline was ordained by God to rule over you.
Did you see like what her estate was worth also? Like it was like something like I wish I could remember this off the top of my head. Maybe I'm tempted to look this up now. But it was something like $40 billion or so. Like, she had billions just in horses. Let's see if I can get this number really quick. And the Crown Estate, $19.5 billion. The Buckingham Palace is, so here we go. The monarchy holds nearly $28 billion in real estate assets as of 2021, which cannot be sold. But that's crazy. And all that's the land the castles sit on. Like just think of it. I mean, and nobody says anything about that. But Elon Musk bought Twitter, and we must raise hell, That
sounds like white privilege to me.
Yeah, a little bit. It's like, what?
But again, there are people that would lose their mind if, like I said, when someone doesn't wear a pride jersey during the national anthem or whatever the most recent nonsense was.
The guy didn't go out for warm-ups.
Yeah. But that's okay. Inbred Nazi bloodlines proclaimed by God to rule over everybody. That's totally okay. Like we're gonna let that one skate and not cancel that shit, but we're gonna get mad at some guy who doesn't want to wear a pride jersey.
Yeah, everyone's priorities are just so out of whack these days. Like, I mean, we're watching it in real time with the White House. Like, they refuse to acknowledge this the classified document scandal, and it's really odd to watch. Like, hey, how come John Kirby said this about Biden? talk to the White House counsel's office. It's like, okay, you're just in denial or you're bad at your job, whichever.
Yeah. Or there's really good script writers in the background keeping that narrative interesting so that everyone will tune in to the cable news nipple of their choice and take a big old suck for the day.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's something to that because that top story hasn't changed, and it's going almost on like 2 weeks now, almost maybe 3 at this point, and it's like, what? It obviously sells because they keep using it,
Like any here's another prediction. Like any good storyline, I mean, some stories are well written, some stories are not. But like any good storyline, you got to have plot twists and ups and downs, and sometimes characters need to be retired. And my guess is that try to be sarcastically pompous. My guess is that. That we are that narrative is going to play out, that all of the real for those playing along with that story, I will oblige. I will oblige and go. The main character, Brandon, needs to be removed, and there needs to be a new character inserted. And the way that character swap is going to go is they're going to blame it on this document thing. That's going to be how the storyline plays out, because it can't get uglier. I mean, again, if you're following the storyline, there's all sorts of reasons why you would want to take Brandon down, but they're gonna play it out in the most milquetoast, soft way possible, and it's going to be this whole document thing. Because it'll be the Monica Lewinsky dress scandal. It'll be like, oh, everybody does it, It's like, oh, everybody gets blowjobs, That wasn't sex. Everybody's got documents at their house.
What's funny about that is if the Democrats could have just controlled themselves when Trump got nailed with his documents, they could easily keep that narrative. But that's kind of why it's a fuck situation for them, because they made such a big deal about these documents that now their guy is in this position and they're trying to be like, oh, well, it's not a big deal. It's like, yeah, but it was when the other guy did it.
But they'll play the whole, but Trump was president and presidents have the authority to declassify or classify anything at will, and Biden was just vice president at the time, and so therefore that's the difference, and he's got to go, and Cop Mala will be inserted as.
And now we're all doomed.
Yeah.
Honestly, it doesn't really. I mean, I always kind of say to people, I'm like, the federal government really has no like day-to-day oversight on your life. It's just an entity that oversees. It's like the corporate office to the, if the states were restaurants, the federal government's a corporate office. It's all it is. Like I'm not trying to say it doesn't have any effect on your life, but like, I'm going to be more affected
really
by what the county does here,
It doesn't have to. I mean, first of all, the federal government is a 10-mile plot of land there, the District of Columbia. That's like anything federal is confined to that plot of land and doesn't go beyond it. It's just, again, a lot of authority is assumed or declared.
Yes, that I agree with 100%.
I mean, I can sit here and say I have authority over you. And if I say it enough, maybe you might believe it, and maybe I might be able to start playing it off. But if you just keep telling me, no, dude, no, you don't have authority over me, at some point I'm gonna go away. You know what I mean? Because you're not playing along, and you're not letting me have authority over you. And so that's why, like, there's so much power in us having the ability to say no. Even more powerful than saying no is completely ignoring them. I mean, just ignoring them. I mean, they don't like. I don't know, man. I've never gone to my mailbox and there was never a Jimmy Carter prize for me. There was never a Bush 1 prize for me, a Bush 2 prize for me, a Clinton prize for me, a Barry Soetoro prize, stage name Obama. I mean, all.
That's right. I agree with you 100%. I mean, the only prize I got out of Obama was my job wouldn't let me work over 28 hours anymore. And that's kind of when I was like, all right, maybe I need to start paying attention to this stuff a little bit more. But, I mean, that was for me when I'm like, wait a minute. The government is trying to provide me with insurance, but the businesses just pivoted around and screwed me even harder now. I'm like, the government is just useless. They can't do anything right. They never will. And they're just, if they ever get involved in something, they're going to screw it up, you know?
And it's in our best interest to just ignore them.
Yeah.
Just I mean, at best, those that are still paying attention, you're in an abusive relationship. You're in an abusive relationship, and you need to walk away. He doesn't love you anymore.
Yeah, that's what it is. I mean,
he never did, and he will always keep cheating on you. So walk away.
Just get away. I mean,
Yeah.
run away, really. You should just
Yeah.
run as fast as far away as you can, you know? It's like, I kind of understand, like, I don't want to say I understand it, but like, I came from Lake County, Illinois, which is the county just above Chicago.
Mhm.
And if you look at a map, like, there's a lot of like little city governments in that county. And I was always under so like, do you remember that show, My Name is Earl? Ever?
Oh,
Okay.
love my name.
The great fucking show. So when I used to watch that was when I lived out there. And
one of my favorite skateboarders, by the way.
who was Jason Lee? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's good. When
he's
he was
pro
in
skate.
when he was in Mallrats and stuff, I did not like that guy. And then My Name is Earl came out, and I was like, this guy's hilarious. I mean, maybe he just played the bad guy that well. But in that show, I remember this when I was living out in Lake County. Actually, it was Highland Park, Illinois. I don't know if you remember that 4th of July shooting. Maybe we talked about that last time, but that's where I grew up.
Yeah.
So in My Name is Earl, he would always refer to where they lived as Camden County. And I remember at the time, I'm like, what is that all about? And fast forward all these years later till I'm living here in Florida, so I'm close to Kissimmee. Actually, I think the subdivision we're in kind of hits the city limits a little bit. But outside of that is run by the county. And another area we used to live was also run by the county. And it wasn't until I think for the longest time when I lived here, I'm like, it's only temporary. We're moving back to Illinois. Then COVID happened. I'm like, we're not leaving Florida. So I wanted to get used to, like, I wanted to know the area more. And what I've realized is kind of what we were saying earlier about this abusive relationship you end up with the government is here in this county that I'm in Florida, there's only 2 city governments, Kissimmee and St. Cloud. If you're anywhere else in the county that isn't in the city limits, you deal with the county and the county only. And why I kind of grown to like that is, in a way, it's less government, you know, because where I was in Lake County, there's there's not a lot of spots you're going to go to where you deal with the sheriffs because it's loaded with city governments up, down, and right. Now, if you get to the more western part of the county, maybe you're in a rural area, but right on the lake, there's just that whole lake is dotted with city governments. So if you're trying to drive 20 miles north to wherever, do you know how many speed traps you're going to be driving through? Where here, that doesn't really, you don't deal with that. And that's like that's to kind of what you were saying, where people just end up, they're so far in the forest they can't see the trees, not realizing, hey, not everywhere is like this. You know what I mean? And that was kind of one of the big takeaways I got from moving to Florida, that a lot of my friends up north in Chicago, they seem to have this Stockholm syndrome. They do not want to leave that place,
Well, I've got many friends and associates that are in Southern California, LA area specifically. And I mean, that is like, it is a complete, like living in another country.
Yeah.
I mean, the things, they are so heavily regulated and what they can and can't do. And, I mean, rolling blackouts are a regular thing. And, I mean, you never know if water's going to actually be on or not. And, so sometimes you can only use this much water. And it's like, man, Stockholm syndrome, I think, describes it perfectly. For some reason, the people that live in California, I think there's just this stigma of I live in California or I live in LA, I live in LA, and they will, just to live in LA, they will put up with things. There's no way. I would love to see anyone in government that is currently in government in the city of Los Angeles move like someplace like where I'm at, or some of the other places, like maybe the Dakotas or, and try to pull some of that crap. And I mean, you will have, the men won't even have to stand up. The moms will tear their asses
Oh,
up.
yeah.
So, I mean, so it really is as simple as, there's way more of us than there are of them. And they've just proven to themselves time and time again that it's not that hard for them to control and corral the masses to do the things that they want done, whether it's profit, whether it's war, whether it's, wear this piece of whatever headgear so that, we can tell which one of you are compliant, which one of you are not. And we just have to just say no. If people start telling authorities no, you don't have to be a jerk about it, but if you just go, no, not going to do that, I'm just not going to do that. I mean, are they going to lock everybody up? I mean, there's already, not enough cages to put humans in. So, I don't know, maybe Brandon and Trump can get together and build more cages for kids. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a perfect example of how like the media just because the cages Trump was putting all those kids in were the ones Biden and Obama built, but we don't want to talk about that. I just like
but of course again it's showbiz for ugly people. It's like well he's doing it now, so it's bad.
When I started really getting into politics, I remember like one of the first eye-opening moments for me was like, oh, they just talk about this on the surface level because they know everyone's not paying attention like, this small sect of people are. Like it's just this palatable, just something you can just, someone can just turn on their TV, it's just easy food to eat. You know what I mean? And you feel smart. Oh, well, I know what's going on. It's like these things are so nuanced that you probably don't. And honestly, that's why I like talking politics with some people, because like when you talk sports with people, like they can kind of fake their way through it if they watch enough Sports Center, but with politics, if you're just trying to like survive on the surface, you get exposed pretty quickly.
Think about how arrogant the term news is. I mean, for any one entity to claim that they are the news, I mean, is arrogant at best. I think it could even be argued that it's manipulative at its core. I mean, what's news to me might not mean jack to you.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So for any one entity to go, this is the news, right there, that's frickin' programming. You are being programmed to be told what the news is, and it's like, man, we everyone's seen the memes of all the news reporters all reading their scripts in sync, and I mean everything is scripted. If you are seeing it on your if you're seeing it on your fondle slave device, or you're seeing it on whatever screen, unless you are seeking it out, it is probably a mainstream network or a network affiliate, and you are not. There are very, very, very few things. I used to have a friend who did a lot of copywriting, and for a bit there, do you remember when Bill O'Reilly had his show on Fox?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did some was one of the behind the scenes writers there, and it used to. I mean, I knew because I've been in that business for a while, so I know how it works. But it used to blow this friend of mine away that people actually thought that Bill O'Reilly, and not he's not the only one. Those who do that type of show, they thought that was all off the cuff, and it's like, man, that's so not off the cuff.
No, yeah,
it is.
You could see the reading off a teleprompter.
Well, and I mean, there's a pacing to it. It's just like, if you've ever been in a band, you work out your set list, and you
yes, yeah.
You open up with a song for a particular reason, and you close with a song for a particular reason. There's a flow to the set, and there's a flow. You don't gather an audience of that size by doing things off the cuff. Most people don't flow that free. Even Marshall Mathers doesn't flow that free without Eminem has to write his lyrics down.
Right. Exactly. Oh yeah, totally. Yeah. I mean, it's
what I'm saying. So it's like, if you're seeing it, if it's coming through any of these major networks, it is scripted. It is produced. I mean, why would any business at all crafts their narrative? I mean, that's literally what marketing is crafted narratives and manipulation to get you to do something. Buy this, or win this or sign up for this or go see this thing or buy this widget or go, it's
I mean, they're good at it too, because like even I'm aware of what's going on, and there's sometimes like, I mean, I'm not exposed to too many commercials these days. They're pretty easy to avoid, but there's sometimes I'll watch something and be like, man, I want Wendy's now. Damn it, it worked, But that's
well,
just
and now commercial. I mean, it used to be that it wasn't as blatant, where you could actually make the determination and go, hey, that's a commercial. Okay, now that's the show. But like now, movies come out and they're big commercials. Artists release songs and they're big commercial. They're agenda commercials. I mean, gone are the days when you're getting any sort of mainstream content, whether it's music, TV, movies, books, where it's not some sort of manipulated, controlled, agenda-driven marketing ploy. I mean, it's man, I don't know. I long for the days when people would just make art and things. People would write for the sake of writing. People would sing for the sake of singing. People would make a movie because they wanted to tell a story. But now you've got the likes of like, everything's agenda driven. I mean, James Cameron, do we think that these Avatar movies are not, there's not a real healthy dose of programming in there?
Well, yeah, like I remember saying to my girlfriend, like when the first one came out, I'm like, look, it's obvious that they had a message and they weren't trying to hide it either. But it was, it was, I still liked the movie, you know what I mean? But there's an agenda, you know what I mean? And that's why we don't really go out to movies. Well, I mean, she was always, let's go to this movie. I'm like, I'm not going to the movies anymore. It's too expensive. And they're always trying to like preach at me, We went and saw Free Guy. That was the Ryan Reynolds movie where he's like in the NPC that becomes alive or whatever. Mm-hmm. And it was okay movie. But for me, there was a scene in it because it looked like it was like a Grand Theft Auto style game, and he's an NPC within the game that becomes alive or conscious or sentient or whatever. And he's aware that he's just an NPC in this game. And then eventually they have to, rally everyone to fight the big third act, And in this speech that they're having, because what it is there's a girl on the outside who comes into the game and she likes Ryan Reynolds, and they're giving a speech to rally the troops, and he's like, I can't remember what it was. Is he goes in one of the lines of the speech, he goes, well they don't have crazy explosions and people shooting guns at them all the time, and then she goes, well, and I openly went like, really? You guys couldn't help yourself there? Like, you just couldn't let that one go? Like, everyone sees what you're trying to do here. Like, just and that was when I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like, even if I'm trying to make it funny, it just ruined it. Like, I'm trying to watch a movie. Like, I mean, it's the same thing with the NHL. The NFL's not any different. I mean, NBA is even worse probably, but they can't help themselves. And a lot of it is too because the people who are in the positions to make these decisions are all college educated. They went through the system. They've been pre-programmed, and in a way, they have the power now to basically shove down this ideology on the people who are buying it who don't even want to hear about it. It's
their job.
Yeah,
it's literally become their job. Yeah. If you just take a little sidebar, I'm always on the lookout for just content, real, raw, good, entertaining content of any kind anymore. And if you are not already familiar with it, if you want one of the best written, funniest TV shows I think I've seen in my lifetime, a show called Letterkenny. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, so the guy who does the podcast with me, he's been on before. His name's Ken Carangello, or Mub, as we like to call him. He's my best friend. I've known him for years. He loves that show. Like, he's been trying to get me into it for the longest time.
It's an independent Canadian show. It's on a network called Crave. Man, it is one of the most punk rock shows I've ever seen, because they not only they make fun of the agenda. Remember there used to be a time, good old days of South Park, where kind of nothing was sacred, and
they go after whoever.
They go after everything.
Yeah.
Well, Letterkenny does that even better than South Park did.
Really?
And just, oh my gosh, and you just, I mean, gut-bustingly funny stuff.
Yeah, because he told me about it, and then randomly my girlfriend's sister mentioned it to me, and I'm like, is this the Canadian one? And she's like, oh, it's so hilarious, you'd love it. And people keep telling me I'd love this. And I think when I was out in Chicago, me and Ken or Mub tried to sit down and watch the show, and he's like, not doing it for you. And I'm just like, I couldn't wrap my head around it. Maybe I might have to give this a second chance now because you're the third person to tell me you're gonna love this show.
It's kind of one of those things, I don't, another thing that kind of was like that with me was people would tell me, you got to watch Napoleon, remember Napoleon Dynamite?
Yep. Oh,
it's
yeah.
Like, you got to watch that movie. And the first time I watched it, I was like, it's funny, but it didn't really do much for me. But then I watched it again and I kind of got it. And I was like, oh, and now like after having watched that probably, 20 times, there's still all these brilliant little things that are in the background and stuff that, the people that made a piece of art and
Yes.
they made it to be watched and dissected and people notice things in the background. And Letterkenny is very much like that, where you can watch these episodes over and over and over, and you're still going to catch little things and just it's watching things in the background. It's refreshing to see a show so well put together, so well written, and so freaking funny. Like it.
It's me and my friend, we were actually just discussing this recently because, him and his girlfriend, they like to watch TV, and he's like, dude, we can't find anything new, almost in the last 12 years to watch. Like, they just started going back in time to, watch, something from the 90s or something like that. And I'm like, yeah, man, comedy is, I don't want to say it's dead, but it's not what it was. They refuse to make it. It's good.
All the real content creators have moved on. I mean, if you are a real artist of any kind, if you're a real creative of any kind, you're certainly not working in mainstream corporate anything.
Right.
You're not going to make, if you're a musician, you're certainly not working in mainstream corporate music. So in a way, there really is a lot of good stuff, but it's all kind of underground again, and I think that's cool. I like when things are underground because they're real and they're off the radar of the masses, and the powers that shouldn't be are too busy herding cats with their corporate wands, and so the stuff that is stuff that's underground is always going to be a little better quality and a little more entertaining.
Yeah.
But definitely give Letterkenny a try, man. It's a absolute brilliant show.
All right, I'm gonna have to do that. It's because for me, like when we watched it didn't really shout out to me, hey, this is gonna have some opinions on society and stuff like that. It just didn't ring true to me. So maybe I might watch it a little bit closer next time.
Yeah, you gotta give it a. They're short seasons. I think each season is like 6 episodes.
Okay,
so
all right. Well,
give it a season.
I'll do that next time up in Chicago. Me and my buddy will sit down and we'll give it a second time. I tend not to be as open to something like, for instance, I remember my sister was when the Goldbergs came out. She was like, "You love this show? It's right up your alley." And I'm like, "Yeah, I don't know. I probably wouldn't like it." And I ended up liking that show. I mean, it kind of it went downhill towards the end, like most TV sitcoms do. But the other one she told me about, this happened recently, like a year or so ago. She goes, "Have you ever seen Silicon Valley before?" And I was like, "No." And the only time I had heard of Silicon Valley was when the guy, T.J. Miller, he was in Deadpool as well. He got canceled, but he was on Silicon Valley. I think that got his... I think he got the Deadpool gig maybe because of that, but he was such a hard person to work with. They kicked him off the last season or two. So I was like, that's how I knew what the show was. And she goes, "You love this show." And my sister knows me so well. So I was like, all right, I'll give it a shot. It ended up being a pretty funny show, but I was pretty close-minded to liking it probably for the first few episodes. And then there was a line that was in there that made me laugh. And, it's Mike Judge, the guy that does Beavis and Butthead. So I was like, okay, I'm probably going to like this. It ended up being there was a few times I was like, pause it, I'm laughing too hard. You know what I mean? So and my buddy's like, "Dude, you'll like that about Letterkenny." So I'm going to have to capitulate and give this show a shot here.
You will not regret it.
All right, good.
I love when characters are so well portrayed that you almost wish, man, I wish these people were real. I wish I could actually hang out with these.
Sometimes, like when I used to watch like Seinfeld, I used to say to my friends, like, "Man, don't you sometimes I wish I knew Michael Richards so I could just get high and be like, dude, be like Kramer for like 5 minutes." You know what I mean? Just to see what that would be like. But that's also like be like, "Dance, monkey, dance." And they probably wouldn't want to do that. But if you had a close enough relationship with this person, maybe, that's the closest I imagine. you get to that.
Seinfeld's an interesting topic because that's one of the few examples of, there is a Jerry Seinfeld, the real person.
Right.
That, you and I could go like knock on his door right now and he's probably drinking coffee or something. But there's also Jerry Seinfeld, the character. And I think it's interesting to note that Jerry Seinfeld, the human, does not fully own Jerry Seinfeld, the
Right.
character. Jerry Seinfeld, the human, wanted to go make Seinfeld t-shirts. He'd have to get, even though he is Jerry Seinfeld, he'd have to get that cleared with the other people who own Seinfeld, the character, which, be Larry David and NBC. I'm sure there's several other entities in there that own pieces of that, but sorry about my phone is going.
No, it's all right. No worries.
No, but Jerry Seinfeld, I think it's an interesting example of most people don't think that there's actually two Jerry Seinfelds, but there is. There's one that's the character, and there's one that's the real human. He just didn't change his name. He didn't use a stage name.
And what's interesting, I read a book. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were done with your thought there. My apologies.
Oh no. I'm just saying that when I say things, like Barack Obama is a stage name, was a stage name. I mean, that is why when most public officials are using stage names, or slight variations of their birth name, and that is why they'll never be held accountable, because you can't sue Darth Vader. There's no such thing as, Darth Vader is a fictional character, so you can't sue Darth Vader, which is why you're never going to sue Nancy Pelosi, because Nancy Pelosi is a fictional character. There might be a human being, maybe that's a human being, but there might be a human being that we know as the character Nancy Pelosi, but that's, I can guarantee you that there's I think even, I may be wrong on this, but I think even Trump is a stage name. I think the correct spelling of Trump's birth name has an F at the end of it. I think it's Trumpf. Don't quote me on that, but I think, because that person was a media character prior to that. We all watched the show. There was, he had a couple of different shows. He had the
Celebrity Apprentice.
The Apprentice, and wasn't he involved in one of those like Want to Be a Millionaire or some shows like? Anyways, but that
I don't remember, but
anytime you go on TV or movies as as another entity, that there's a commercial aspect to that, and there's a big difference between the public facing, using Nancy Pelosi as an example, or Barack Obama as an example, or picking on the blue people. You can do with anybody. There are 9 times out of 10 that's not even their given name. That is a corporate commercial entity that is being presented publicly, and that is why you rarely, if ever, will see any of these individuals held accountable, because again, try to sue Darth Vader.
Yeah, and it's like with what you were saying with Seinfeld, what's interesting is I read a book about, I think it was him in the show or whatever, and what was kind of interesting is so when he got Seinfeld, when NBC offered him that show, his management team, I remember saying, they're like he's already doing $2 million a year in bookings. They're like, he's gonna be fine with or without this show. So what you see in the show so obviously Jerry by season 8 was worth lots of money. I think they wanted to pay him like $5 million an episode in the late 90s, which that's probably almost $10 million now an episode.
Yeah. Life's been good to Jerry.
Yeah, definitely. But in the show, if you like season 1 through 8, he's just a comedian. Okay, so what I found interesting in in the show, he's just playing the part in his life where he was like a comedian, because obviously with Seinfeld in the show, we're talking about the character, he's walking around everyday life and nobody knows who he is. So that tells me in the show he's just some comedian that goes, because there's episodes where like, oh, he was in Atlantic City, so he's a traveling comedian, but he's not the Jerry Seinfeld that is in our universe. So it's just interesting how the show did it that way, because I remember watching it when it was on, and he's Jerry Seinfeld, who it can get confusing, but because I remember watching it like, is this a fictional Jerry, a real Jerry? Because the real Jerry is very famous, and this fictional Jerry, he's not. It's very fascinating, to see that. And I think last time we kind of broached this subject, and I think what I was saying is, it was kind of like, and I use Tom Cruise as the example, is does Tom Cruise know who Tom Cruise when he's Tom Cruising, And I whenever I see him, I always think that whenever he, like the famous, I think the famous clip of him is when he's jumping on the couch on Oprah. And people assume, oh, well, maybe that's who Tom Cruise is. But I posit, do we even know who Tom Cruise is? Does he even know who Tom Cruise is?
And is that even his real name?
Yeah, that too, yeah. Because that's another thing. You see a lot of these celebrities, they'll have their celebrity name, and it's not even, I mean, I can't think of anyone off the top of my head, but I know there's plenty of examples of that.
Oh, Gene Simmons of Kiss.
He's like some like Roth, is he some like Goldberg name or something weird like that?
It's an Israeli name.
That's close.
I'm gonna mess it up, but it's like Chaim.
Yeah, it was something like that. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Here's one. The guy who did 2.5 Men. Chuck Levine, I forgot that guy. The guy who produces all those. Chuck Lorre, that's his name. He did like Dharma and Greg, 2.5 Men. He's this huge TV creator, and his name in real life is Chaim Levine, but he goes by Chuck Lorre.
Bob Dylan was Robert Zimmerman.
Wow, I mean that's crazy.
Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that everybody that has taken a stage name is doing it for nefarious reasons. I mean, obviously, and I'm a huge Dylan fan. So obviously Robert Zimmerman doesn't have the same zing.
Right.
Bob Dylan.
Right.
That sounds better, and he was a big fan of Dylan Thomas, the poet, and so it made sense. But in a lot of cases, especially in public service, let's just call it public, there's the use of stage names it's quite rampant, and it's a strategy. Again, try to sue Darth Vader. You won't.
Oh, okay. Now I kind of made the connection with what you were just saying there. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, like how would you go about? Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if people will sit there and they'll whether they're watching CNN or they're watching Fox, they'll scream at their TV show, "Oh, how are they getting away with this?" Well, first of all, it's their playing field. It's their money. Money's a whole other topic. Like,
yeah.
There isn't even really money. It's all debt notes.
Yes.
But it's their currency, their playing field, their media, and if you did try to take them to their own the court system too, their courts, they're going to win because they've got their paperwork in line. You can't, they for the most part are a commercial entity on paper, and that commercial entity on paper is different than the living, breathing human that you might be screaming at your TV about.
Yeah, that's and I remember years ago Clinton kind of saying this. I don't know if it's exactly what you're saying, but kind of along the lines where you have a public persona and then you have a private persona, or in her case, she said a public policy, private policy. But I think it still kind of goes hand in hand there.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, you and I both could. As soon as we're done here, we could go out and we could just go register a whole new persona. I could be, I could be, I don't know, come up with some stupid name. I could be Johnny Razor.
Johnny Razor.
And I file all the paperwork, and and I could start the Johnny Razor show. And maybe I get, maybe I jump in with the rest of the scum, and I become, maybe I'm on CNN or Fox News, and I'm Johnny Razor, and I'm saying all these things and pissing everybody off, and everybody's mad at Johnny Razor. Why doesn't Johnny Razor ever get sued? Well, because Johnny Razor's not real.
Yeah,
I'm Jon Gusty. I created Johnny Razor, the entity, but and you can I guess you could try to sue Johnny Razor, but if I'm smart, Johnny Razor, the entity, doesn't have anything. I've moved that all over into other.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
I might scoot that over to your account. Maybe you're my business partner, and so I put all the money over, and they don't even know who you are. You know what I mean?
Yep.
You're some innocuous person on the sidelines that's holding all my money, and they're trying to sue Johnny Razor, and it's like, and I'm just sitting in the back as Jon Gusty, just going, I'm not worried about anything because
Yeah.
they're mad at a fictional name, and they're trying to sue that. And, good luck with that.
I always try to remember that when I'm watching anything, from the news, or even if I'm like, at a concert or something like that. And it just always, like, I remember this as a little kid when I'd be in school and, they'd bring in a third party to entertain the kids. And, they would be like, a magic show once. And I remember sitting there thinking, I'm like 7, 8 years old, watching this guy as a magician, like, what is this guy, like, I was always fascinated because they have this professionalism, this persona, you know what I mean? Like, what is this guy like when he's not doing this? Like, I'm always fascinated by that, like to the point where, like, when I started serving tables, I kind of adapted that. Like, I adapted that, not realizing how I was kind of sacrificing professionalism by doing that because I was so fascinated by the behind the curtains aspect of it.
But you were if I understand you correctly, you were in essence creating a character, like when you were, your server character, and you could kind of,
Yes.
you could be somebody that maybe you're not privately.
Yeah, and that's what it was, because like I'm not really after a while, like when I first started serving, I was like, oh hey, how's it going? And I remember I worked at this one restaurant, and I worked with this guy named Todd, and this guy it didn't matter if it was a 90-year-old Jewish lady or a 7-year-old kid, this guy could talk to them. And I'll never forget him talking to these two old ladies. This is when I lived in Phoenix, and I watched him talk to them, and I was fascinated by this. I remember asking him, like, how do you do that? He goes, what, talk to tables? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, just talk to them, man. And it's so simple, but for someone like me, and I had a friend who had even more anxiety about talking to tables than I did, and I was like, all right, I'm going to try this. And then I'll never forget this. After this conversation, these two 90-year-old ladies walk up to our general manager, and they're like, Todd is the greatest server ever. And I'm like, all right, this guy's obviously onto something.
Yeah,
and I started doing that, and fast forward, it was probably like 6 years later or so. It was like when I was down this way and working in restaurants around here. And I kind of the same thing. I started realizing I'm developing this personality. Like, I think one of my favorite things I used to do is I'd walk up to a table and they were all they were done with their plate, and I would just be like, oh, you're not going to lick it clean. Like, just dumb little lines like that I would never say in my personal life to anyone. I would probably be a lot more, on the mind in the gutter side of it, because I'm not this corporate clean person when I'm out on my own time. That's what it was.
And a politician was born.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Hey, you said you lived in Phoenix. I actually grew up in Tempe.
Oh, really? Okay. I think we might have talked about this last time, actually.
When you're talking about, these public personas and how, the people in real life are real different. I think it still is to this day the longest running. It's long since off, but the longest running kid show in the history of kid shows was a show called Wallace and Ladmo, which was a show out of the Phoenix area.
Oh, okay.
Show I grew up with, and it was it's basically it was just two guys that worked at the local news, Channel 5 or whatever it was, and they dressed up like Laurel and Hardy, and they just were, and this is like back in like the 50s, 60s.
Oh wow, it's going way back.
And that's when they started, and they would just do like Saturday morning they'd be like play cartoons and stuff like that. It just turned into a local thing in Phoenix, and they became like beloved, just Phoenix icons, TV icons, kids. I mean, I grew up with Wallace and Ladmo. I mean, and they were there before I was born, you know what I mean? And so like lots of generations knew these two men as these kid show icons. And I thought it was funny, like later, now I think they've both since passed away. But it comes out that like they hated kids. Like one of them hated kids with a passion. But they were like known as, Captain Kangaroo or Barney or like any of those other kid shows. They were one of those, and it's all kids all the time, and you never knew it watching them. They were just jovial and loving on the kids, but like privately they freaking hate
They
it.
hate it. Yeah, it's because there's always the public and the personal, and they always kind of seem to be at odds with each
They were
other.
playing a part. They
Yeah.
were playing a part.
So because I grew up in Chicago, so it was always Bozo the clown for us.
There you go. Oh yeah.
Like I remember the bucket thing where they throw the ping pong into the buckets, and it always aired because that was back when I was in K through 5, so this is like the latter half of that. And I remember that would always air at like 7:55 in the morning, and school started at like 8:04, but it was just across the street. So I'd run over to my friend's house, just 2 houses down. We'd watch the bucket challenge, and I just remember the crisp $100 bill. That's always in my head, about if you got to the 6th bucket. And that's what we grew up on. And then I think after that, it would just turn into like Power Rangers and just slowly got away from the children's programming.
I'm so glad you brought up Bozo because remember like a few years back when the God bless the pranksters amongst us, but remember all the clowns?
Oh yeah, the clown craze. Yeah, yes.
Like, no one ever like came out as Bozo. Like
No.
Bozo was like the craziest, most creepiest looking clown. What, man? Imagine like looking out your window at night, dead of night, and you freaking see Bozo standing there, like in your backyard with a shovel or something like that. Like, nope.
Yeah, no thanks. Some of these clown costumes, they seem to want to go in the it monster kind of direction.
Like to go in the Slipknot direction.
Yeah, okay, that's better. Yeah, totally. Wait, that's exactly what it is. Yes.
Yeah.
But that's
Yeah.
I thought that was funny. There's some people that were like, "Oh, I'm going to kill this guy if I see that." It's like, well, I mean, it's a little bit much, but I guess I fear snakes, so I shouldn't really say much here.
Yeah, anybody that doesn't know Bozo the Clown, do an image search and try to out creep that clown.
Yeah, good, and you're not going to. I mean, the sidekick he had.
Was it
I
Mr.
can't.
Green? Was
can't
it Mr.
remember.
Green Jeans? Or is that Captain
It's so long ago. I can't. I just remember him having like that shoulder length hair, and it wasn't that scary, but I don't know. I just. That second clown, he didn't do it for me. Bozo was okay, maybe because he was giving out $100 every day. Maybe that made it easier.
Yeah, clowns in and of themselves are an interesting subject, and and it's, maybe here's a nice ending segue, but we're kind of living in clown world
Yes,
right now.
that I agree with 100%.
Yeah, and and none of the clowns, they're all creepy clowns, man, all of them.
Yes. Yeah, it's just with the government, you have these warmongering uniparty people that are just out there trying to tell you, like, or basically just piss down your shoes and then telling you it's raining. And it's again kind of what we were just saying. You have these people that they have these public lives and then their personal lives, and I guarantee you what they're saying publicly is definitely at odds with how they live their lives personally.
Well, the best we can do is embrace our middle fingers.
Yes.
Learn how to say no loudly and politely, and smile our way through it. Because you don't. I'll keep saying this as long as I have a breath. Authority is always proclaimed, because it is. I mean, there is no sacred bloodline that has the right to be an authority over anyone, not Queen Lizard Beast or anybody else. Authority is always claimed, and it's just up to us, the subjects, to go. No, we're not, and unless there's some harm being done, some true harm, not upsetting someone or offending someone, that's not harm. I mean, harm is, if I shank you in the neck with a screwdriver, that's harm.
That's harm, yes.
Yeah, and so unless person A is harming person B, leave person A alone, and let them live their life the way that they want to live it, and when they tell you no, back off.
Yeah, I agree. And
that's my message to status actors out there. Just back off when we tell you no, mean it. Back off. You're playing some little authoritative game, and not all of us are playing along. There's a lot of us that aren't playing along, and so you go play your game, play it on your little playing field, but there's a large portion of us that are just not we're not playing along, we're not going to play along, and quite frankly, spend most of our time ignoring your little statist asses. So just stay. Keep your religion to yourself, and we'll be good. And for those for those who are making a noble effort, but like yourself, to try and change it from within. I mean, I have nothing but respect for that. I would say that another simple analogy, if you've got let's just say you're offended by an adult bookstore, and one crops up in your neighborhood, and there's people that'll spend the rest of their lives trying to get that thing shut down. um, the best thing you could do is ignore it. Just ignore it. Don't go in there. Don't give it your money. Eventually, if enough people don't go in there, it'll go away. But even if it stays there and thrives, you still can't get mad about it, and you certainly wouldn't go get a job at the adult bookstore to try to change it from within. Because you're just, and I think there's a lot of well-meaning people that are trying to change this system from within. And again, you can get a job at a porn store to try to change the porn store. And maybe you have some grandiose idea you're going to change it into a sushi restaurant or something, but you know what? No, you're not. It's a porn store, and you can work there. You can work your way up to management, but short of buying the store out, you're not going to change it from within. But that's a lot of wasted effort. Just walk on by the store, man.
Yeah, just keep going on.
Just keep going.
And there's some people that, like, I mean, this might be at odds with how I feel, because if you love a video, if you hate it, I think you should comment, because that's kind of what I see with my stuff. But that there's some people, like, for me personally, let's put it this way. For me personally, if I'm on the internet, if I'm out and about, like, I know that it kind of goes like this: love and hate is this far apart. And if you feel the need to, comment on a video and write a paragraph about it, well, what the difference between love and hate is this much. So that's why I say, like, all that hate is almost as good as all that love, if that makes sense at all.
Well,
You know what I
it
mean?
makes total sense,
Yeah.
because what it actually is it's attention.
Yes,
And
because either way you're getting it,
you're getting the attention. And I will say this: none of those people, when those people, by those people I mean the statists, none of those people have anything without our attention.
Yes.
And they need our attention. And the more of us, that's what I'm so big on. Just ignore them. For every one of us to just turns it off. Just turn off the screen. Put your fondle slab down, and for God's sakes, if you're gonna, if social media is by definition narcissistic. I mean, narcissism is just look at me,
Right.
read me, listen to me. And we all do it. We're doing it right now. Both of us are.
I was just thinking
both
that.
of us
Yes.
are partaking in narcissism
Correct.
right now. But there. I'm not going to leave this podcast, and I'm sure you're not either. And whether somebody buys my book or likes this video or whatever, my life doesn't depend on it. Yeah, I wouldn't mind if somebody bought a book. Buy two and give one to a friend. But that's not why I'm here. I'm here probably for the same reason why you're doing this. We like to exchange ideas. We like conversation. We like talking, and hopefully we provide a service of some sort for people who like to listen to conversation, or maybe want to hear some different thought patterns and ideas. Instead of just the same old crap that keeps getting regurgitated on mainstream networks and stuff. So I mean, I like I said, I applaud. I applaud you. I applaud all of us that are just trying to further the art of conversation.
Yep.
And most importantly, just further the art of independent thinking. And it's okay. It's okay to be a creative thinker. It's okay to be skeptical. It's okay to have a difference of opinion. I don't know. Somewhere in the last several years, there's a large portion of our society that feel that they are entitled to never be offended. And I'm sorry, but that's not an entitlement. I
No,
mean, if you think you're entitled to not be offended, my gosh,
you're gonna have a long life.
life is going to be
Yeah.
hard for you, because man, life is full of offense, and you just have to pick your battles and pick what's going to get you all worked up. I can get worked up about a lot of things, but I'll tell you what, I let a lot more things just roll off my back, because at the end of the day, man, it's a lot of times it's just other people acting stupid, saying stupid things, or trying to control for some reason, whether it's profit or war or whatever their agenda is. And it's like, man, I'm just roll on by.
Yeah.
Like I said, like the adult bookstore. It's
Yeah.
like,
Just
man,
keep
I
walking.
don't care. Just keep walking, man.
Just keep walking.
If I want porn, I know where to get it. If
Yeah. Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I just yeah. Well, on that note, I think we are going to leave it at that. I would love to have you back on for a third time, technically, but we'll call it the second time. We'll get all that in the works. We'll figure that out. And I just really want to thank you for coming on. And I'm actually glad we did this the second time, because we went another hour. We got 2 hours out of this. I think it was a great conversation. And John, you're awesome, man.
Right back at you, my friend. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate your time. And again, I just value conversation, and this was a good one.
Appreciate it, sir.